All right, so I tweeted this out a couple of days ago, noting that everybody seems to have a different rookie RB3 in this class. We know that Bijan is RB1. Most everybody has Jahmyr Gibbs at RB2. But is there a right answer to who RB3 is? Now let's start with the player that I think is becoming the consensus RB3, and that's Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. Now Charbonnet is being talked about as a top 5 running back in last year's class, ahead of Rachaad White, James Cook, Dameon Pierce, all those guys. That's how good he was last year. But he decided to stay for his 4th season in 2022, and it was his best season yet. Over 1,300 yards rushing on just 195 carries, good for 7 yards per carry, and he scored 14 times on the ground. He also leveled up his receiving numbers with 321 yards on 37 receptions. And it's honestly the type of season that he needed to have in order to not lose value in his draft stock by staying that extra year. On film, Charbonnet is a powerful runner behind his 6'1", 220-pound frame, but he also has really good contact balance and vision as well, so he's not just totally reliant on his size to gain those extra yards. He does lack top-end speed though, which is fine given all the other things that he does really well as a ball carrier. But if he runs like a low 4.5 or even in the 4.6s, that could be something the NFL knocks him for, and that drives down his draft stock. And that, I think, is my biggest issue with him right now, is I don't have a good idea of where he's going to be drafted. I would not be surprised at all if he was a 2nd-round pick, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he was a 4th-round pick either. He does a lot of things really well, but he's not elite at any one thing, which is something that I actually said a lot about Isaiah Spiller last year, and he was a day 3 guy. He also has some Dameon Pierce in him just with the way that he runs, also a day 3 guy. I've heard Elijah Mitchell comps for him, given his size and his lack of speed, also a day 3 guy. So while I don't mind if people have Charbonnet as their RB3 now, I'm not able to put him there until I see what the NFL believes about him first. Now on the complete opposite spectrum of Zach Charbonnet, we have Devon Achane, the smaller frame but massively explosive back out of Texas A&M, who finally was able to have a backfield all to himself this year after Isaiah Spiller left for the NFL. And boy, was it everything that we thought that he could be and more probably. 1,100 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns on 196 carries, plus another 200 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air on 36 receptions. Achane has blazing speed as a track star. I would honestly not be shocked if he's a 4.2 guy at the combine. He has quickness, acceleration, burst, cuts on a dime. All of those words, all those phrases can be used to describe Achane's play, and all of that was on full display in 2022. But is all of that enough for him to succeed at the next level, or at least be usable for fantasy for our purposes? And to that I say, I don't really know. He is a small dude. He's currently listed at 5'9", 185, and that's scary because he could be even smaller than that if A&M was boosting those numbers a little to make him seem bigger at the college level. This is not a Maurice Jones-Drew, J.K. Dobbins, Doug Martin situation where those guys were short, but they were wide. They were all well over 200 pounds. This is a Tariq Cohen, Darren Sproles, Donnell Pumphrey situation, and that's my biggest fear with Devon Achane. Does the NFL typecast him into a very specific role as a 3rd down pass catcher? I mean, they've done it to others who are even bigger than Achane. Gio Bernard, Duke Johnson, these guys were workhorses in college, but because they were 5'9", 200 pounds, they never really got that opportunity in the NFL, and they just are who they are at this point. Nyheim Hines, J.D. McKissick, Dion Lewis. These are very specific role players in the NFL who are all almost irrelevant for fantasy on a weekly basis because all they get is a couple of receptions and a couple carries per game. That's it. And that's my fear with Devon Achane is we can believe that he's so much more all we want, but at the end of the day, it only really matters what the NFL actually thinks he is. Now, before I keep going, guys, I wanted to let y'all know that we have launched our YouTube membership, which is going to get you guys extra content every single month. There are already 3 extra videos up right now, exclusive to members, and much more will be coming, as well as exclusive live streams like rookie mock drafts, all draft season long, emojis, badges, and we've got even more coming down the road too. So if you like this content, you want to see even more, sign up for our membership using the link down in the description below. All right, I think it's time to talk about Tank Bigsby, who was once one of the keystone players in this running back class, but now just feels like he's another cog in the wheel of this massive, like, 3rd tier of running backs. Bigsby came onto the college scene quickly as a freshman in 2020, taking over as Auburn starting running back almost immediately rushing for 834 yards and 5 touchdowns on 138 attempts. He also followed that up with 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2021 as a sophomore, including 21 receptions, but then he dropped down to 970 and 10 on 179 attempts in 2022, but he did grow as a receiver, now up to 30 receptions in year 3. But that drop in production, I think, is driving a lot of the, I don't want to say fatigue. I think that's the wrong word. Maybe blandness, boringness. Because on film, he looks really good. He has good speed, good burst, good contact balance, everything that you want to see from a running back, but it just seems like there's just certain extra something that's just missing. And I'm worried that that something, whatever it is going to make his draft stock fall. It's similar to Isaiah Spiller last year, where he was good out of the gate, good in year 2, and then good again in year 3. But notice how it never said great or even really good. He was just good. He was not elite at any one thing, nor was he bad at anything either. Again, he was just good. But just being good isn't good enough in the NFL, and that showed by Spiller falling all the way down to round 4 and basically not doing anything at all in what appeared to be a good situation with the Chargers in his rookie season. Now, to Bigsby's credit, he is a much better athlete than Spiller was, but is that enough to significantly change how the NFL sees him? Is his upside limited to like a David Montgomery type, a Miles Sanders type? Those guys are RB2s, but is that what you want from your rookie RB3? Just a fantasy RB2? So to me, that's why Bigsby falls a little short on my rankings, and I think he ends up falling short for the NFL as well too, but we'll just have to wait and see. But let's talk about someone way more exciting to me, and I think is largely being underrated right now, and that's TCU's Kendre Miller. Now, Miller had a fantastic 2022 season now that he was finally able to have his own backfield. He rushed for 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns on 224 carries. He also added an additional 16 receptions, which, I mean, isn't great, but at least it's something. Now, I really can't explain why I like Kendre Miller so much, but when I watch him on tape, he just looks like a really, really good NFL runner. He's powerful, but he's also patient. He has somewhat surprising speed and burst for a player of his size. And from all of that, I've just been calling him Dameon Pierce, just hopefully with better draft capital for this 2022 class. And assuming that he runs faster than a 4.6, he will grade out very well for me analytically given his top end production in 2022. I just need him to go on day 2 to hopefully a good landing spot like the Philadelphia Eagles without Miles Sanders, Buffalo, maybe Dallas is like the new Zeke Elliott if they're trying to move on from him. If any of that happens, Miller probably isn't the RB3 in this class for me, but he's definitely well inside my top 5. But we can't talk up Kendre Miller without talking about his former teammate, Zach Evans. Now, Evans was at TCU with Miller for 2 years before transferring to Ole Miss in 2022, which opened up the ability for both backs to have their own backfields. Now, I've seen a lot of people put Evans above Miller in their rookie rankings, and I don't necessarily know why. Statistically, Miller paced Evans while they were both at TCU for 2020 and 2021, despite Evans being a 5-star big-name recruit out of high school. You could even argue that Miller kind of pushed Evans out and was the reason why he transferred to Ole Miss in the first place. And then when both players got their own backfields in 2022, Miller outproduced Evans again in 2022 and even caught more passes. Maybe that was because TCU was a lot better of a team than Ole Miss was, but maybe TCU was better because they had the better running back. I don't know. When I see Zach Evans, I see Trey Sermon. I see maybe at best Lamar Miller. I don't see the same upside for him as I do Kendre Miller, and I also think that the NFL might see it the same way. But lastly, let's talk about who I actually have as my rookie RB3 right now, which is Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. I absolutely love Sean Tucker. He checks off just about every box that I'm looking for from a running back. You want a workhorse who broke out as a sophomore with 1,500 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns on 250 carries? That's Sean Tucker. You want a guy who was used as a receiver out of the backfield, hauling in 36 receptions as a junior, which was the same number as Devon Achane? That's Sean Tucker. And speaking of Achane, you want a guy who has Achane speed, but isn't as small as him, but rather built like Christian McCaffrey? That's Sean Tucker. I can't say enough good things about this man, and the last thing that I need to see from him is round 2 draft capital, and that's a wrap. I really want him in Miami as the main back for Mike McDaniel and this East Coast Niners offense. I also wouldn't mind Buffalo, Philly, Chicago, or even Cincinnati when Joe Mixon gets cut. He's going to come in as one of my highest graded backs in this class, possibly even ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs too, just from an early look at these numbers. That's the direction this is heading in. At the beginning, I said that there doesn't seem to be a consensus RB3 in this class, but to me, I think it's very, very clear that it's Sean Tucker. And since we're on the topic of rookies, I highly recommend checking out this way too early Superflex rookie mock draft right up here.